close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me.
Welcome, students, and you're welcome to Compass class. Our topic for this week is data and information. I remain Mr. Dennis. Under our objective for the class, we'll be talking about the definition of a data, the definition of data processing, the definition of information, examples of data and information, the differences between data and information by way of juxtaposing them, and how computer process data. I know when we talked about the overview of a computer, we talked briefly about how data is being processed. We talked about how computers process data. So by virtue of this class, we'll be expanding a little bit more using a typical example. Now, what's data? The word data is a plural of datum, which means fact, observation, assumption, or occurrence. When you talk about data, they are unprocessed facts. Data, they are observations that has not been completed. They can be assumptions or they can just be occurrences. What does data mean too? They are factual information used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, calculating, publishing, or decision making. Now, before a decision is made, data must be collected. When the decision has been made, it means it has been processed. So, at the initial stage, to help with decision making, it has to do with data, regardless of its size or purpose, generates data, records, and transactions that take place within a business. What is data processing? Data processing is simply the act of handling or manipulating data in some fashion, regardless of the activities involved in it. Processing tries to assign meaning to data. Now, what do I mean? I mean the ultimate goal of processing is to transform data to information. Data processing is actually the process through which facts, figures are collected, assigned meaning, communicated to others, and retained for future use. Now, what do I mean further? I mean that we can define data processing as a series of actions or operations that convert data into useful information. We most times use data processing system to include the resources that are used to accomplish the processing of data. When you talk about data, factors affect data processing. You have the size and type of a business can affect data processing. Timing aspects can also affect data processing, and the link between applications. Now, what then is information? Information can be defined as a data that has been transformed into a meaningful and useful form for specific purposes. I come again. Information can be defined as data that has been transformed into a useful form for specific purposes. And in some cases, data may not require any processing before constituting information. What do I mean? Generally, data cannot be useful unless it is subject to a process through which it is manipulated and organized. Its content is analyzed and evaluated. Only then can data become information. Also, when you talk about information, there is no hard and fast rule for determining when data becomes an information. A set of letters and numbers may be meaningful to one person, but may have no meaning to another. And when you talk about examples of data processing, what comes to our minds can be the letters, can be letters, can be numbers, it can be alphanumeric numbers. It can be your books, it can be chairs, it can be names, it can be houses, it can be schools. Everything that pertains to data anything that pertains to an instruction can be regarded as an example of data and information. For example, your bag is a data. Your book is a data. A school has data in it, but when you talk about a school, it has already been processed, that various data has been processed. So a school becomes an information. That's the reason why when they say go to school, you know that school has to do with learning. It means that the word school has been processed into something meaningful, which is called school. Also, when you are transferring information from one place to another, now the information is being processed through a media or through a transmission media. Now this transmission media is regarded as processing. Are you with me? It is regarded as processing. A sender sends a message to a receiver. The receiver, before it gets to it, it's been processed. If it's not well processed, the receiver would never get it. In third term, we'll be talking about communication system. Now, how does computer now process this data? How does computer process data from a monitor to the delivery, or from the computer to the delivery personnel? How do you, using a drone, how does a drone serve as how computer processes data? We'll be discussing briefly on how, in two scenarios: one in a logic diagram, and two in a very typical diagram, how data are being processed, or how computer process data. Now let's take the very first one. You have when the data gets into the computer, and I've explained this before, but for proper understanding, when data gets into the computer, the very first place it goes to is that it goes to a register. Now a register is also regarded as a memory. Now when it moves to the register, also called an accumulator, it sends the information to a storage point and also to the CPU. Now when you talk about the CPU, what comes to mind is the arithmetic and the logic function, or the arithmetic and logic unit. Arithmetic has to do with letters, numbers, and alphanumerics, and logic has to do with just reasoning, comparing, and the likes. Now, using this as an example, the input, which serves as your keyboard or your mouse, you type whatever you're typing, or you click whatever you're clicking, it sends a message down to the processor. The processor here, this is where the register is. When it sends the message to the processor processes this information. When you talk about the processor, I'm referring to the CPU. So those of you that have not seen a CPU at the middle right now, this is a CPU. It sends the information to the CPU, from the CPU down to a storage point. The storage point processing is being done. When it's ready and willing to actually give birth to a very meaningful information, or when all criteria has been met, it then comes out to your monitor. So when you click A, it is a process. Okay, this is A, and it sends the information to your monitor, and that's it. So So next time we'll discuss more about all this. See you in our next class. Thanks for watching. Bye.
A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. There's a house